Okay, we're going to take a look at if-else statements. Now, an if-else statement is going to allow us to run different lines of code depending on if that statement was true or false. So, in our code here, we have our if statement, and if this is true, it's going to go ahead and run this block of code. If this is false, it's going to go ahead and skip over this block and just move on down to the next line of code. Now, we have the variable the value true saved to our variable myBool. So let's go ahead and run that. And it prints to the screen. So this was obviously true. Now if we change that to false, nothing should print out and it should just move on down to the next line of code. And there we go. Now that in itself is not terribly useful, but if we were to use some comparison operators, we're able to compare two different values. So here is our equal comparison operator. And notice that it is different than the assignment operator. This is two equal signs, not one. And the comparison operator is going to look for a value on the left and to the right of itself. And if this returns true, it's going to go ahead and run this block of code. And if it's false, it's just going to go ahead and move on down to the next line. Let's go ahead and run that. And it was true. This block of code ran. So 1 and 1 are obviously equal to each other. So let's go ahead and change that where they're not. And it does not print. Now, there are several other comparison operators. We've just covered the equal, but we also have the not equal. And this one's going to look and see if we return a false. And if we return a false, then it's going to go ahead and run the next block. So change that. So this is going to ask if A is not equal to B, then it will go ahead and run this block of code. And it runs. So if they were both equal, and remember it's looking for a false, this should not print out to the terminal. There we go. Now, looking at the rest of our comparison operators, we have our, our less than, our greater than, our less than or equal to, and our greater than or equal to. And that's just checking, just like it was in math class, if it was greater than or equal to. And let's take a look at this chunk of code right here. We have an if statement, we have an else if statement, and we have an else statement. Now this is going to let us to check several different conditions. So if this if statement is true, this block of code will run, and then it'll skip on down to the line 49 down here, and none of this stuff will run. If this one is false, it'll go on down to the next statement. So it's going to check if else age is greater than or equal to 18. If this is true, it'll run this block of code and it will run nothing else and just move on down to the next line. And so on. If this statement was false and this statement was false, it'll move on to the else statement. And notice this one doesn't have two values it's comparing. The else statement is more of a default. If everything else is false and you want something else to run, this would be the one you would use. So we're going to go ahead and run this, and we have age set to 24. In the USA anyway, to be old enough to purchase alcohol and cigarettes, you have to be at least age 21 or older. And if you want to be able to purchase cigarettes, you need to be at least 18. And if you are not that age, either of those, old enough for either of those two ages, you cannot purchase either. Let's go ahead and run this. And 24 is old enough for purchase of alcohol and cigarettes. So basically it just said, hey, 24 is greater than 21. It runs this block of code and then it doesn't run anything else. And if we run, let's say we change the age to 21, this still runs this first block of code because this is a greater than or equal to, and 21 is equal to 21. And this one runs the second block of code because 19 is not greater than or equal to 21, moves down to the next statement, and since age is greater than 18, it runs this block of code, and then it doesn't run the rest. And let's move on down to the last one here. Oopsie. 16 is not old enough for alcohol or cigarettes. So since this one was not true, it moves down to the next one. This one wasn't true, and it runs our default, which is the else statement, and this will run no matter what, as long as the other ones are false. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.